My world shattered the day my daughter casually erased 50 years of my life. At 69, I'd moved into her modern home, leaving most of my past behind, hoping for warmth. But when she tossed my old cedar trunk, filled with Arthur's letters and my hand-stitched wedding dress, calling it junk for a yoga studio, my heart fractured. What she didn't know was that hidden within that discarded junk was the deed to a fortune she couldn't even imagine. Before we jump back in, don't forget to subscribe while you're listening, and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, take a breath and listen closely. This is my story. My world shattered the day Clara casually erased 50 years of my life. At 69, a retired seamstress, my hands still yearned for the silk and the satisfying hum of my old machine. But now, they mostly performed quiet, unnoticed tasks in Clara's modern, minimalist home. After Arthur passed, the silence in our old house had become a heavy blanket. Clara, my only child, insisted I move in. I packed only my most precious boxes, leaving decades behind. Stepping into their immaculate, airy house, I felt like a quiet ghost. I tried to earn my place, cooked Arthur's comforting recipes, mended their clothes, even sewed intricate, whimsical costumes for my granddaughter, Lily. Clara would often dismiss my efforts with a shrug. "Mama, it's so heavy," she'd say about my roast. Or, "Lily already has a store-bought one," about a handmade dress. My presence felt like a constant apology. Their plenty of room quickly felt like a shrinking box. My small Victorian lamp, an anniversary gift from Arthur, vanished one day. "Oh, that old thing?" Clara had chirped. "It just didn't work with the aesthetic. Marcus took it to the charity shop." Then, my favourite armchair, where Arthur and I had shared so many quiet mornings, disappeared from the garage. Each lost item was a tiny chip off my foundation, slowly stripping away pieces of my past. I learned to keep my voice low, my movements small, hoping to become less noticeable, less of a burden. It was a Tuesday morning when the true fracture began. I woke to the distinct scrape of furniture and hushed whispers from the hallway. An uneasy flutter stirred in my chest. When I finally emerged, the house felt strangely hollow. My old cedar trunk, heavy with memories, the one that had sat at the foot of my bed since before Clara was born, was gone. A cold dread seeped into my bones. That trunk held Arthur's letters, Lily's first baby shoes, and most importantly, my wedding dress, hand-stitched, thread by painstaking thread, 5 decades ago. Clara appeared, a bright, oblivious smile on her face, scrolling through her phone. "Morning, Mama. You slept in?" she chirped. "Marcus and I did some serious decluttering last night. Needed to make room for the new yoga studio, you know? That old trunk? Full of junk. We tossed it all. Tossed it all." The words punched the air from my lungs. My wedding dress, my memories, my life, neatly packaged and labelled junk. Tears stung my eyes, but no sound escaped. It was a profound, soul-deep nausea. This wasn't just about a trunk. It was about my existence being deemed irrelevant, disposable, like yesterday's newspaper. Clara's dismissive shrug, her vacant eyes, confirmed it. She didn't see me. I stood there, utterly helpless, a phantom in my own family's home, feeling the agonizing tear of my heart, watching my history vanish. Then, a low growl, growing louder. The garbage truck, 2 blocks away. Panic, sharp and cold, sliced through my despair. I stumbled out, still in my nightgown, the morning chill unnoticed. My lungs burned as I raced down the street, my mind screaming. This wasn't just sentimental attachment. This was a desperate race to reclaim the last tangible piece of my past, the one thing that still held the warmth of Arthur's embrace. The truck loomed at the curb, its mechanical arm whirring. There it was, my old cedar trunk, teetering on the edge of the large green bin. My hands shook as I reached in, pulling out bundles of old fabric, musty smells, and finally, crumpled but recognizable, the white lace and satin of my wedding dress. As I clutched the dress, a small, stiff corner caught my fingers. A hidden pocket. My mother had taught me that trick for safekeeping precious things. With trembling fingers, I tore at the tiny, almost invisible seam. And there, tucked deep inside, untouched by time or Clara's reckless discard, were the original deed papers. Not just any papers. These were the only existing deeds to the untouched piece of family land that had belonged to my great-grandmother, a forgotten plot, wild and undisturbed for decades, never digitally registered. What Clara called junk was, in fact, a legal gold mine. A shocking jolt told me everything was about to change. This wasn't just about reclaiming a dress. It was about reclaiming a future, a forgotten legacy. But how many of us, when faced with such casual cruelty from those we love most, truly find the strength to reclaim not just a physical thing, but ourselves, piece by agonizing piece? The tattered papers, smelling faintly of cedar and forgotten time, suddenly weighed more than gold. I stood on the sidewalk, the crumpled wedding dress still clutched in one hand, the folded deeds pressed tight in the other. The roar of the garbage truck faded, replaced by the pounding of my own heart. What Clara had tossed as junk wasn't just my past. It was a dormant, powerful secret. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The land my great-grandmother spoke of, dismissed as family law, was real, and it was mine. I walked back into Clara's house, a ghost re-entering a familiar, yet now alien space. The air inside felt stifling, heavy with the unspoken truth of what had just transpired. Clara was still at the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone, utterly oblivious. "Mama, you went for a walk?" she asked, not looking up. "Did you find some peace?" Her words were like a cruel joke, twisting the knife. I merely nodded, my voice a dry husk. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. The knowledge of those deeds, that hidden pocket of power, was too fragile, too potent to share. It was mine, and mine alone. For the rest of the day, I moved through the house in a daze, the deeds hidden beneath the mattress in my guest room. Every creak of the floorboards, every casual word from Clara or Marcus felt like a threat. My usual quiet tasks, preparing dinner, reading Lily a story, were performed with an odd detachment, my mind buzzing with possibilities. I looked at Clara, then at Marcus, laughing loudly at something on the television, and a cold clarity settled over me. They saw me as nothing more than a convenient, silent fixture, a shadow to be swept aside when inconvenient. This land, this forgotten earth, was my chance to be seen again, to be more than a discarded memory. That night, sleep was a battle. My mind replayed the scene at the curb, then shifted to faded memories of my great-grandmother, her gnarled fingers tracing maps in the air, speaking of the untouched parcel. Arthur had always chuckled, calling it her fairy tale land. Now it wasn't a fairy tale. It was leverage. The thought was a strange, unsettling blend of grief for what had been lost, and a nascent fire of determination for what could be reclaimed. I knew, with absolute certainty, I had to verify this, and I had to do it without Clara or Marcus ever knowing. The next morning, I feigned a sudden headache. "Oh, Mama, again?" Clara sighed, barely glancing up from her coffee. "Just take some Tylenol. Marcus and I are going out anyway. We'll be back late." A perfect window. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, I retrieved the deeds, wrapped them carefully in a silk scarf, and slipped out the door. The nearest town with a reputable land registry office was an hour away by bus. The journey felt monumental, each mile a step further away from the suffocating confines of Clara's house. The lawyer's office was old-fashioned, comforting in its quiet formality. Mr. Davies, a kind-faced man with spectacles perched on his nose, listened patiently as I explained, my voice trembling slightly, the story of the trunk, the dress, the hidden deeds. He unfolded the papers, his brow furrowing as he examined the aged parchment and elaborate calligraphy. The silence stretched, thick with anticipation. My hands were clammy. This was it, the moment everything would either confirm my hope or shatter it completely. He looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Mrs. Albright," he began, his voice soft. "These are absolutely authentic, flawless, and they predate most digital records. This parcel, it's quite large and undeveloped." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "Based on current market values for land in that region, particularly undeveloped plots, this isn't just a piece of property, Mrs. Albright. This is a significant fortune. Life-changing, in fact. Why was it never registered digitally?" I could only shake my head, my throat tight. "Family secret," I whispered, the words tasting like victory. A profound realization washed over me. All those years, all those sacrifices, feeling overlooked, undervalued, the quiet suffering. It wasn't for nothing. I held a truth, a power, that my daughter and son-in-law, in their careless dismissal, had quite literally thrown away. The irony was a bitter, satisfying taste on my tongue. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice gaining a new, firm quality. Mr. Davies leaned forward, his eyes serious. "That, Mrs. Albright, is entirely up to you. But you are no longer just Eleanor, the retired seamstress. You are the owner of a very valuable piece of history and property." The bus ride back felt different. The passing landscape, once a blur of mundane fields, now seemed vibrant, full of possibility. The deeds, tucked securely in my bag, felt like a beating heart, pulsing with new life. I was no longer just the old woman who lived in the guest room. I was Eleanor, a woman with a secret, a gold mine, and a burgeoning plan. Clara and Marcus still viewed me as the same quiet burden, but they were about to learn that some things, once discarded, hold a power far greater than they could ever comprehend. But when power shifts so dramatically, how does one decide the true cost of justice, especially when family is involved? The weight of the deed papers in my hands was no longer a burden, but the blueprint for a future they could never suspect. Back inside Clara's pristine, silent home, the air still hummed with the phantom vibration of the garbage truck. My wedding dress, rescued and carefully folded, lay hidden, no longer just a relic, but a symbol of a past nearly lost and a secret reborn. The knowledge of that untouched land, confirmed by Mr. Davies, pulsed with a quiet power beneath my skin. They thought they had discarded my history. Instead, they had unearthed my destiny. I began to move with a new, subtle purpose. My eyes, once downcast, now observed Clara and Marcus with a keen, almost surgical precision. I saw their carefully constructed world, built on appearances and convenience. Clara would spend hours on her tablet, browsing luxury vacations she'd complained they couldn't afford, while Marcus fretted over fluctuating stock prices. Their conversations revolved around acquisition, the new car, the upgraded kitchen, the must-have designer bag. They spoke of financial freedom, but their lives felt bound by an invisible chain of consumerism. My own freedom, I realized, was now quietly blossoming in the wild, undeveloped acres they had unknowingly thrown away. The land itself became a world-building exercise in my mind. I pictured my great-grandmother, a stern but visionary woman, walking those untamed acres, seeing potential where others saw only wilderness. It was remote, untouched by modern development, a vast expanse of forgotten trees and silent earth. Its very anonymity was its greatest strength, a perfectly hidden asset. The thought of it, stretching under open sky, was a stark contrast to the shrinking guest room I inhabited, its walls closing in with every discarded item of mine. They craved space in their modern, sterile lives, yet they had thrown away a vast, unburdened expanse. The irony was profound. My meetings with Mr. Davies became my clandestine adventures. I would invent errands, doctor's appointments, that Clara would barely register, too absorbed in her own schedule. Mr. Davies, with his kind eyes and precise legal mind, became my confidant, the only person who understood the seismic shift occurring beneath the placid surface of my life. "We need to handle this with discretion, Mrs. Albright," he'd advised, his voice hushed. "Given the family dynamics you describe, a sudden reveal could cause significant complications." I agreed. The element of surprise, I decided, would be my greatest weapon. We discussed options for the land. Selling it, of course, was the most straightforward path to liquidity. But what then? The thought of simply having money, a fortune, no longer felt enough. It was about more than revenge. It was about reclamation. It was about defining my own worth on my own terms. We talked about investments, foundations, and trusts. He laid out complex legal diagrams, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I understood every word, every implication. I was no longer a quiet, deferential woman. I was a strategist. One afternoon, Clara burst into my room, phone in hand. "Mama, do you ever think about what you'll do with your will?" she asked, a forced casualness in her tone. "I mean, it's good to be prepared, right? Just so everything is organized." She chuckled nervously. Her eyes flickered to the old, battered photo album on my nightstand, the only sentimental item she hadn't managed to declutter. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. They weren't just discarding my present. They were already planning my future, my inheritance. "Oh, I'm sure I'll get around to it, dear," I replied, my voice calm, almost sweet. "There's still plenty of time." The lie felt both liberating and chilling. The discussions with Mr. Davies deepened. We drafted a new will, meticulously, clause by clause. The quiet satisfaction of making these decisions independently for myself was intoxicating. The bulk of my newly acquired wealth would not go to Clara or Marcus. Instead, a significant portion would establish a foundation, the Eleanor Project, dedicated to supporting elder women who had lost their voices, their dignity, their homes. This felt like true justice, transforming my pain into purpose, a quiet act of defiance that would echo far beyond their narrow, materialistic world. The decision was made to sell the land. Mr. Davies began the quiet process, navigating the complex world of undeveloped property sales. Each phone call, each email, was a thread in the intricate web I was weaving. I was no longer merely observing, I was orchestrating. Clara and Marcus remained blissfully ignorant, wrapped in their self-serving bubble, complaining about rising costs and the need for more space. They never once suspected that the junk they'd tossed was about to provide me with enough space to build an entirely new life, far beyond their reach. The transformation was happening, not with grand pronouncements, but in the quiet, irresolute beating of my own heart. But how many of us, given such a shocking chance at turning the tables, would choose to build something beautiful from the ashes, rather than simply seeking to burn what remains? The quiet hum of the house, once a source of suffocating stillness, now felt like the low thrum of a finely tuned machine, running precisely to my hidden command. Days bled into weeks, each one a thread woven tighter into the tapestry of my secret plan. My morning routine remained unchanged, a polite nod to Clara and Marcus, a shared breakfast, where their chatter about bills and designer furniture washed over me, unheard. But inside, I was no longer Eleanor, the quiet seamstress. I was the architect, painstakingly laying brick after invisible brick of my future. My phone, a simple flip phone I'd had for years, became my lifeline. Mr. Davies would call, always at precise times when I knew Clara and Marcus would be out, or consumed by their endless digital lives. His voice, calm and professional, would deliver updates on the land sale. "We have an interested party, Mrs. Albright," he'd say, the words like a soft bell. "They're moving quickly." Each update was a small, internal burst of adrenaline, a jolt of power coursing through my veins. I'd spend hours in my room, not sewing or reading, but browsing on my old, slow laptop. Coastal towns, quiet communities with views of the ocean. A small, cozy home with a porch, a garden, maybe a spare room for a proper sewing studio, not just a corner in a sterile guest room. I imagined the salty air, the sound of waves, the boundless horizon. It was the antithesis of Clara's confined, meticulously curated world, and the vision fueled my resolve. One evening, Marcus stormed into the kitchen, his face flushed. "Another rate hike," he growled, slamming his tablet onto the counter. "This economy is killing us, Clara. We need more space, but how are we supposed to afford anything when interest rates are through the roof?" Clara, already exasperated, threw her hands up. "I know, Marcus. And Mama's still here. It's tight." Her eyes flickered to me, a momentary flash of something akin to resentment. I continued stirring my tea, my expression neutral. They talked about space, as if it were a physical thing they lacked, never realizing the vast, empty acres I secretly owned, the very land they had dismissed. The irony was a bitter, satisfying taste on my tongue. That night, I saw the discarded cedar trunk, sitting empty in the garage. Marcus had found a new plastic storage bin for his tools. He'd left the trunk open, revealing its rough, unfinished interior. I ran my hand over the aged wood. It had been with me through so much, and now it stood empty. A shell. But the treasure it once held was now forging a new path. It made me realize that some endings aren't just endings. They are profound, necessary beginnings. The pain of its dismissal was still there. A dull ache, but it was now laced with an invigorating sense of purpose. The weeks stretched on, filled with nervous anticipation. Mr. Davies arranged for the final paperwork. It was a day I would never forget. I dressed carefully, not in my usual quiet greys, but in a smart navy dress I hadn't worn in years. Clara and Marcus were oblivious, engrossed in their morning coffees. "Mama, going somewhere special?" Clara asked, a vague curiosity in her voice. "Just errands, dear," I replied, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. The truth was, I was going to sign my new destiny into existence. The lawyer's office felt like a sanctuary. Mr. Davies presented the final documents, a thick stack of papers detailing the sale. My hands, once trembling when I first found the deeds, were steady as I signed. The ink flowed, sealing the deal. The land, once a forgotten legacy, was now a significant fortune, sitting in an account that was solely, definitively mine. The weight in my chest lifted, replaced by a liberating lightness. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the profound act of reclaiming something they had taken, something I hadn't even known I possessed. But a fortune in hand was only the first step. The true test lay in how I would use it, how I would sculpt my reclaimed life, and how I would finally, irrevocably, set myself free from the long, cold shadow they had cast. And when the time comes to step out of that shadow, how does one truly sever ties with the very people who created the darkness, without losing a piece of oneself in the process? The taste of newly minted freedom, bought with forgotten earth, hummed beneath my skin. Returning to Clara's pristine house after signing the final land sale papers, the contrast was almost unbearable. Their world of muted tones and carefully placed decor, once suffocating, now felt like a stage set I was about to abandon. I moved through the foyer, past Clara, who was already engrossed in her phone, utterly oblivious. My secret, the quiet fortune now sitting in my bank account, felt like an invisible cloak, making me unseen and untouchable. The first step was the will. Mr. Davies had already prepared the initial drafts, based on our earlier discussions. My visits to his office became more frequent, always disguised as trivial errands or non-existent lunch dates. Each clause we discussed, each percentage allocated, felt like a deliberate stroke of my brush on a new canvas. I was building not just a financial future, but a legacy that would honor what had been taken. The thought of The Eleanor Project, a foundation to help elder women reclaim their voices and dignity, filled me with a quiet, fierce satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge, it was redemption. Clara and Marcus, meanwhile, continued their predictable dance of financial anxieties. "The property taxes are insane, Clara," Marcus would exclaim over dinner, slamming his fork down. "And Lily's private school tuition just went up again. We're stretched so thin." Clara would nod, her gaze drifting to me. "It's a lot, isn't it, Mama?" she'd offer, a thinly veiled comment on my continued presence. I would simply nod back, offering a sympathetic hum, my mind miles away, picturing sun-drenched coastal towns. The delicious irony of their complaints, while I sat on a fortune they'd discarded, was almost too much to bear. My search for a new home became my most cherished pastime. Instead of flipping through magazines, I spent hours online, my old laptop humming softly in the quiet of my guest room. I bypassed the sleek modern houses like Clara's. I envisioned something different. A small, cozy cottage by the sea, with a wraparound porch and a lush garden where I could grow roses, a proper sewing room, filled with natural light, where I could hear the distant cry of seagulls. It was a vision of peace, of self-sufficiency, of a life truly lived on my own terms. One afternoon, I found it. A charming little bungalow, weathered by the salt air, with a vibrant blue door and a small patch of overgrown garden in front. It was exactly what I had imagined, a place that felt like a breath of fresh air after years of holding my breath. I arranged a private viewing through Mr. Davies, ensuring Clara and Marcus would be none the wiser. Walking through its empty rooms, I could already feel the warmth, the quiet promise of a life unburdened by judgment or subtle dismissal. The sound of the ocean, a constant, rhythmic hush, felt like a lullaby after years of urban noise. The purchase was swift, discreet. The money, the junk Clara had thrown away, flowed seamlessly from my account. Signing the deed to my own home, a place of my choosing, was a moment of profound triumph. There were no grand pronouncements, no dramatic confrontations, just the quiet scratch of a pen, securing my escape, solidifying my future. I was no longer the guest, the burden, the ghost in the foyer. I was Eleanor, the owner, the architect of my own destiny. The keys in my hand felt heavier than any gold, yet lighter than any burden I had ever carried. The new will was also finalized, a stark contrast to Clara's earlier, presumptuous inquiries. The Eleanor Project was officially taking shape, ready to offer solace and support to women like the old me. The thought of Clara discovering the truth, not just about the land, but about the inheritance she had so eagerly anticipated, sent a chill down my spine. It was a bridge I knew would eventually be crossed, a reckoning that awaited. But how does one prepare for the moment the oblivious finally become aware, and the shadows of past dismissals are brutally illuminated by the shocking light of a truth they refused to see? The keys to my new home, nestled in my pocket, felt like a silent detonation switch, counting down to the inevitable explosion. After finalizing the purchase of the seaside bungalow and solidifying my new will, every moment spent under Clara and Marcus's roof felt like borrowed time. The house, once a supposed sanctuary, now pulsed with their obliviousness, a stark contrast to the buzzing awareness that hummed within me. I moved through their days with a new, subtle detachment, observing them as if through a pane of glass. I started small. I stopped offering to cook dinner every night. "Oh, Mama, aren't you going to make your famous casserole tonight?" Clara would ask, her voice laced with mild annoyance. "Marcus loves that." I'd simply smile, a serene, almost mischievous smile that probably went unnoticed. "I'm a little tired tonight, dear," I'd say. "Perhaps something simple?" Marcus would usually just grunt, already engrossed in his phone. They seemed to register my reduced help as a minor inconvenience, not a shift in the tectonic plates beneath their feet. My quiet refusal was a small act of rebellion, a testing of the waters. My true focus was on the sea. My phone, once a mere communication tool, now became a window to my future. Mr. Davies sent photos of the bungalow, confirming the final touches. I'd spend hours gazing at the images, the vibrant blue door, the overgrown garden I couldn't wait to tend, the small, sun-drenched sewing room that would finally be mine. This wasn't just a house. It was a promise, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of my reclaimed life, the desire to simply be there, to breathe that salty air, intensified with each passing day. One evening, a heated discussion erupted between Clara and Marcus. "Did you see the news about that undeveloped land near the old Miller property?" Marcus demanded, pointing at his tablet. "Prices are going through the roof. If only we'd invested in something like that years ago, Clara. We could be set for life." My heart skipped a beat. The Miller property was adjacent to the land I had just sold. I kept my face impassive, stirring my tea. Clara sighed. "It's always, if only, Marcus. We're barely keeping up as it is. Maybe Mama could help out with Lily's tuition next semester." Her eyes darted to me, a calculated glint within them. The audacity of it, even after I had secretly given her family enough to be set for life, was a bitter pill. But the game, I realized, was already well underway. The day came. I had planned it meticulously. Clara and Marcus were leaving early for a weekend getaway, a wellness retreat Clara had booked months ago. Lily was staying with a friend. It was the perfect window. My few remaining boxes, filled only with the most irreplaceable items, Arthur's old photo albums, the rescued wedding dress, and a small, cherished porcelain bird, were already packed. I had arranged for a small moving van to meet me discreetly just after they left. As Marcus loaded their suitcases into their sleek, expensive SUV, Clara hugged me, a quick, almost perfunctory squeeze. "Now, Mama, don't worry about a thing," she said, her smile stretched thin. "The fridge is stocked. Just relax. We'll be back Sunday evening." She didn't notice the small, sturdy travel bag I held, containing my new phone, new credit cards, and the deeds to my new home. She didn't notice the profound, resolute glint in my eyes. "Have a wonderful time, dear," I replied, my voice calm, almost tender. It was a genuine sentiment. Their departure, for me, was a beginning, not an end. As their car pulled out of the driveway, I watched it go, a strange mix of sorrow and exhilaration swirling within me. Sorrow for the family I had hoped for, the one that never materialized. Exhilaration for the freedom I was about to embrace. The moment their car disappeared around the corner, a silence fell, different from the suffocating one. This was a silence filled with possibility. The moving van arrived 10 minutes later. The two men worked quickly, efficiently. My few boxes were loaded. I took one last, long look at the house, a place that had become both a cage and, ironically, the catalyst for my liberation. The foyer where I had stood, a ghost, watching my history discarded, now felt like a threshold. I closed the door behind me, the click of the lock echoing the definitive click of a new chapter. As the small van pulled away, I glanced back. The house looked pristine, perfect, untouched. They wouldn't know. Not yet. The truth, like a slow-burning fuse, was still miles away, waiting for the perfect moment to ignite their carefully constructed world. I knew, with absolute certainty, that when that flame finally reached them, it would scorch everything they thought they knew about me and about their own inheritance. But when you finally break free from the shadows of betrayal, how do you decide when and how to unveil the shocking truth, knowing it will shatter the very lives you once tirelessly built? The moment the blue door of the bungalow opened, a wave of cool, salty air washed over me, a baptism of freedom. My few boxes, carefully packed, were already inside. The movers left, and the silence that settled around me wasn't the suffocating emptiness of Clara's house, but a deep, profound peace, punctuated only by the distant murmur of the ocean. My hand, still holding the new keys, trembled slightly. This was it. My own space. My own horizon. I wandered through the small rooms, each one filled with the faint scent of salt and possibility. The worn wooden floors felt real beneath my feet. The sunlight, pure and unfiltered, streamed through windows that looked out onto the untamed beauty of the coast. I found the little patch of garden I'd seen in pictures, already picturing rose bushes and fragrant herbs taking root. This wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary, a quiet, defiant roar against the dismissal I had endured. The first few days were a blur of unpacking and quiet discovery. I carefully unboxed Arthur's photo albums, arranging them on a small table by the window. The wedding dress, rescued from the brink, found its place in a cedar chest, not discarded, but revered. My sewing machine, once relegated to a dusty corner in Clara's guest room, now sat proudly in a sun-drenched room overlooking the ocean, waiting for fabric to dance beneath its needle. Each act of settling in felt like a deliberate restitching of my own soul. Meanwhile, back in their meticulously curated world, Clara and Marcus were likely enjoying their wellness retreat, blissfully unaware of the seismic shift that had occurred. I imagined Clara complaining about the thread count of the resort sheets, Marcus dissecting the financial news over a perfectly plated, calorie-counted meal. The thought brought a faint, unbidden smile to my lips. Their small, self-absorbed world was still spinning on its axis, completely oblivious that a major star had just exited their orbit. A few days later, my new phone buzzed. It was Clara. I let it ring for a moment, savoring the choice. Then I answered, "Mama, where are you? We just got back. The house feels so quiet. You're not here?" Her voice held a mix of mild irritation and a faint flicker of concern. "Oh, Clara," I replied, my voice calm, the ocean breeze whispering past my window. "I just needed a little change of scenery. I'll be in touch." I heard a sharp intake of breath on her end, then Marcus's muffled voice in the background. "What's wrong? Is she being difficult?" I hung up before she could respond. A quiet, almost imperceptible click. The line went dead. That was the first ripple. Then came the next. A week passed. No calls from me. Clara texted, "Mama, are you okay? This isn't like you. We're worried. Are you with Aunt Carol?" Marcus even sent a brusque email. "Eleanor, where are you? We need to know for legal purposes." Legal purposes. The words hung in the air, cold and transactional. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the absence of their silent housekeeper, their convenient safety net. They were worried about the shift in their comfortable equilibrium. I spent my days with Mr. Davies, charting the course for the Eleanor project. We met in a small, discreet office in the nearby coastal town. The Foundation's mission crystallized to provide not just financial aid, but legal counsel and safe havens for elder women facing similar neglect or exploitation. The name, the Eleanor Project, felt powerful, a tribute to the quiet resilience that so many women, including myself, had to find. This was my life's true purpose now, a legacy of empowerment woven from the threads of my own pain. Back in their city, Clara and Marcus's unease began to curdle into genuine frustration. Lily started asking questions. "Where's Grandma? Why doesn't she make my favorite cookies anymore?" Clara's explanations grew increasingly flimsy. Marcus, ever practical, decided to check on my finances, assuming he still had access, still held my financial strings. His eyes widened as he stared at the screen. The account. It was empty. Not just low, but completely drained. He called Clara, his voice tight with a strange, dawning panic. "Clara, her account, it's gone. All of it. The modest savings she had, the small pension deposits, nothing." Clara snatched the phone. "What do you mean, gone? Mama, what have you done?" The casual cruelty was replaced by a sharp, desperate edge. My quiet departure was no longer just a change of scenery. It was becoming a stark, shocking void in their carefully planned lives. The silence from my end was my answer. I watched the ocean waves crash against the shore, each crest a whisper of the power I had finally reclaimed. They had thrown away cloth, deeming it junk, but I had taken back silence, and with it, my entire world. The tide had truly turned. But when the silence breaks, and the full weight of a carefully hidden truth finally crashes down, how does one stand firm against the storm, especially when the very people who created it are caught in its relentless current? The carefully constructed illusion of their lives began to crack the moment they realized my silence was not absence, but escape. Clara's first calls were mild, a casual irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. "Mama, where are you? The house is so quiet without you." Lily keeps asking. My phone, sitting on the small weathered table on my new porch, buzzed again. I watched the waves roll in, each crest a whisper of the freedom I now tasted. I let her voicemail play, hearing the faint edge of panic enter her voice. "Mama, this isn't funny. Call us." Then Marcus, ever the man of the house, sent a brusque text. "Eleanor, your bank account seems to be empty. What's going on? We need to know where you are for your safety." He clearly meant their financial peace of mind. The sheer audacity of it, after all these years, after the trunk, was a bitter, satisfying chuckle in my chest. My modest savings, the small pension deposits they'd always taken for granted, were now carefully tucked into a new account, under a new name, untouchable. I was no longer a transparent ledger for their inspection. Days turned into a frantic, chaotic blur for them. I pictured it. Clara, hair askew, pacing their pristine living room, her designer clothes suddenly seeming too tight. Marcus, phone glued to his ear, his face pale, working through his contacts, a dawning horror in his eyes. Their perfect home, once a symbol of their control, now felt like a cage, amplifying their rising panic. I knew Lily's innocent questions would be like daggers. "Where's Grandma? Why doesn't she call?" Each unanswered call, each ignored text, was a small, precise incision, peeling back the layers of their entitlement. The phone rang again, late one evening. It was Marcus, his voice strained, a raw edge of desperation I'd never heard before. "Eleanor, this is serious. The land. The old family land. We were looking into it, just curious, and we found out it was just sold. For a fortune. We know it was ours. How did this happen?" He sounded breathless, incredulous. The perfect, polished facade had crumbled. A slow, deliberate breath. I closed my eyes, picturing the wild, untouched acres now transformed into my liberation. This was it. The moment of truth, the climax of my quiet rebellion. My voice, when it came, was steady, calm, carrying the weight of decades of unspoken hurts. "How did it happen, Marcus?" I echoed, a soft, almost pitying tone in my voice. "It happened because you threw away my wedding dress. The trunk. Remember?" A stunned silence on the other end. I could almost hear the blood draining from his face. Then Clara's voice, sharp and high-pitched, snatched the phone. "The dress? Mama, what are you talking about? That old thing was just junk. We were making space. You were in our way." Her words were laced with a frantic, desperate anger, trying to push me back into the small, inconvenient box they'd created for me. "Junk?" I replied, my voice gaining a quiet, formidable power. "That junk, Clara, contained the original deeds to that land. The land that was never digitally registered. The land your great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, painstakingly acquired. The land that was always mine, quietly waiting, tucked away in the lining of the dress you discarded like trash." The silence that followed was deafening. I imagined their eyes, wide with shock, the pieces finally clicking into place, forming a monstrous, undeniable truth. The beautiful, valuable inheritance they had so carelessly tossed was now a fortune in my hands. They saw the value of the land, the lost opportunity. but they still couldn't see the true value of the woman they had scorned. But you don't even have a will, Mama," Clara stammered, her voice cracking, a desperate grasp at control. "Everything was supposed to come to us. We're your family, your only family." "Oh, I have a will, dear," I said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. A very thoroughly updated one, in fact. Mr. Davies helped me with it. The bulk of my estate, the new fortune you just learned about, is going to a foundation, the Eleanor Project. It will support elder women who, like me, have found themselves undervalued, discarded, and in need of a new beginning. You can't!" Marcus roared, his voice thick with rage and disbelief. "That's our inheritance. That's Lily's future. We need that money." "Need it?" I scoffed softly, the sound barely a whisper, yet potent as a thunderclap. "You needed space, remember? You needed to declutter. You needed to make room. And I, Clara, I needed my dignity, my self-worth, my voice. You threw away cloth, dear. And I paused, letting the words hang in the air, weighted with finality. I took back silence, and with it, my entire future. I hung up. The click of the phone echoed, final and absolute, marking the end of a long, painful chapter. I stood on my porch, the salt air on my face, watching the waves. The storm inside me had passed. All that remained was the vast, open horizon, and the quiet, profound peace of knowing that sometimes the greatest act of love is the fierce, resolute love you finally reclaim for yourself. It was a cold, hard justice, perhaps, but how many of us, when faced with such profound betrayal, find the strength not just to walk away, but to build something beautiful and lasting from the wreckage, truly reclaiming not just a life, but an entire legacy? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters more than you know. And if this story resonated with you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales of resilience and unexpected triumphs.